I was young and strapped for cash. Dog sitting seemed like an easy gig, a way to earn some extra money. Little did I know, one particular job would turn into a chilling experience I'd never forget. It started like any other evening. I arrived at the client's house, a quaint cabin nestled deep in the woods. The owner, a middle-aged woman, introduced me to her dog, a large and intimidating Rottweiler named Max. She assured me he was friendly but warned me to keep him inside after dark, mentioning something about strange occurrences in the woods. As night fell, the forest seemed to swallow the cabin in darkness. I settled in, trying to distract myself with my phone, but an eerie feeling crept over me. Max's behavior was odd too. He kept staring at the door, growling softly as if sensing something I couldn't. Around midnight, the power suddenly went out. The cabin plunged into complete darkness. I fumbled for my phone, using its feeble flashlight to navigate. That's when I heard it. A distant howl that sounded unearthly, sending shivers down my spine. Max's growling escalated into barks, echoing through the empty rooms. I peered out the window, but the darkness was impenetrable. Then, a scratching noise at the door made my blood run cold. Max lunged towards it, teeth bared, but I held him back, heart pounding in my chest. I called the owner, but there was no answer. Panic started to set in. I felt like I was being watched, a sensation that crawled under my skin. I decided to wait it out, hoping it was just my imagination playing tricks. But the scratching persisted, growing louder and more insistent. I summoned the courage to open the door, expecting to confront a wild animal or some prankster. Instead, I was met with an empty, moonlit porch. Relief washed over me until I noticed strange tracks leading away from the door, tracks that seemed oddly human. Max's behavior shifted too. He whimpered and cowered, refusing to leave my side. Suddenly, the power flickered back on, illuminating the cabin in a harsh light. I sighed in relief, thinking it was all over. That's when I noticed the handwritten note on the table. It read, "Don't trust the darkness. They're always watching." My heart skipped a beat. I called the owner again, but this time someone answered. It wasn't her voice. A chilling whisper said, "You shouldn't have opened the door." I grabbed Max and bolted out of the cabin, not daring to look back until I reached my car. As I sped away, I glimpsed shadowy figures standing at the edge of the woods, their eyes glowing in the dark. Later, I found out the owner had left town unexpectedly, and the authorities never found any leads regarding the strange occurrences. I never went back to dog sitting after that, and even now, the memory sends shivers down my spine. I often wonder what was lurking in those woods and what would have happened if I hadn't followed that note's warning. I was house-sitting for a colleague in a suburban neighborhood, tasked with caring for their beloved Labrador. The house itself was modern, with large windows overlooking a well-kept garden. Everything seemed ordinary, yet there was an unsettling vibe in the air. One night, a heavy rainstorm knocked out the power, leaving the house in darkness. The dog, usually jovial, became unusually agitated, pacing back and forth in the hallway. I tried to soothe it, but its unease was palpable. In the eerie silence of the blackout, I heard faint scratching noises coming from the back door. Assuming it was just the storm playing tricks on my mind, I hesitated to investigate. But the scratching persisted, growing more insistent with each passing moment. Reluctantly, I approached the door, the dog trailing cautiously behind me. As I reached for the doorknob, a sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and the scratching sound ceased abruptly. Just as I turned to reassure the dog, I noticed movement in the garden, a shadowy figure standing just beyond the reach of the dim moonlight. My heart raced, and I instinctively reached for my phone to call for help, but it had mysteriously disappeared from my pocket. Panic set in as I fumbled for the house phone, desperate to reach the homeowners or the authorities. But the line remained dead, plunging me deeper into a sense of isolation and fear. The dog, now growling and barking furiously, rushed towards the back door, its attention fixed on the shadowy figure. Trembling, I followed, trying to make sense of the situation. As I approached the door, I caught a glimpse of the figure, a silhouette of a person, motionless and seemingly watching the house. Before I could react, the dog lunged at the door, barking wildly, and the figure vanished into the night. Shaken to the core, I secured all the doors and windows, spending the rest of the night on edge, the dog never leaving my side. When morning finally broke, I searched the garden and the perimeter of the house, finding no trace of the mysterious intruder. I contacted the homeowners immediately, shaken but unable to fully articulate the strange events of the night. They assured me that nothing like this had ever happened before and that the neighborhood was usually safe. Yet even as I left that house and returned home, a lingering sense of unease stayed with me. The unanswered questions and the inexplicable disappearance of my phone only added to the unsettling nature of that chilling night, leaving me to wonder about the true nature of the shadowy figure that visited during that stormy blackout. I was a young guy trying to make some extra money by dog-sitting. The job seemed straightforward until I took on a gig in the suburbs that turned into a night of terror. The house was an average suburban home, neat and cozy. The owner, a friendly woman, introduced me to her dog, a playful golden retriever named Buddy. She mentioned casually to keep Buddy indoors after sundown, warning of strange occurrences in the neighborhood. As the evening settled in, the street grew quiet, and the house seemed to take on an eerie stillness. I tried distracting myself with a book, but a feeling of unease lingered. Around midnight, I heard it. A soft, rhythmic knocking on the front door, almost like a playful tap. Buddy perked up, his ears tilting toward the sound. I dismissed it initially, thinking it might be a loose branch or a prank by local kids. But then, giggling, light, childlike laughter echoed from outside, far too close to the house for comfort. There were no children in the neighborhood, and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. The knocking persisted, growing louder, and Buddy started whimpering, his tail tucked between his legs. I hesitated, unsure whether to investigate or ignore it. I approached the door cautiously, the laughter sending chills down my spine. Just as I reached for the doorknob, the knocking stopped abruptly. I peered through the peephole, half expecting to see nothing but darkness. Instead, a fleeting shadow darted away, disappearing into the darkness of the street. I called out, but there was no response, only an eerie silence. Buddy continued to whine, his gaze fixated on the door as if he saw something I couldn't. As I closed the door, I noticed a child's drawing pinned to it. It depicted shadowy figures with hollow eyes and twisted grins, accompanied by the words, "Come play with us." A shiver ran down my spine. I tried calling the owner, but there was no answer. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself it was a prank, or my imagination getting the best of me. Then more laughter. Childish giggles echoed from the backyard, getting closer. Buddy's whimpers turned into panicked barking, and a feeling of dread settled in. I grabbed Buddy and rushed to my car, not daring to look back until we were safely away from that house. As I drove off, I caught a glimpse of shadowy figures standing at the edge of the street, their laughter lingering in the air. To this day, I can't explain what happened in that quiet suburban neighborhood. I never went back, and the memory still sends shivers down my spine.